Okay, so we're live. Welcome along. Thank you so much for joining me, Leanne, for this FFS tea break. Oh, I nearly said the whole title there. It nearly slipped out, but we're FFS in it because we're on LinkedIn today. So I am so excited about hosting this session. I must admit that I thought you were going to land on one of Cara's dates, and I was like, not a chance. So I want to talk to Leanne myself. Thank you very much. So I'm so delighted to have you here. I'm going to do a quick intro, but I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself as well. But I'm a massive fangirl of yours. As you know, it's a bit awkward, isn't it? Leanne is the co-host of one of the best business podcasts that there is. She has an absolute skill, along with her partner Al, of just making psychology and business insights available to the everyday person. She does such a brilliant job of connecting business leaders to things, and she's also a kick-ass business psychologist. So I'm a bit delighted to have her here today. So anything that I didn't say, Leanne, that you should say about yourself? What do you want to say as by way of intro?
I think you covered it really. Yeah, I'm a chartered psychologist. I'm a podcaster. I'm the nerd that brings the science. Al, my partner, is an entrepreneur who brings a business. He keeps me in check and makes sure I'm speaking English, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, you know, if you haven't checked out the podcast, absolutely do. Truth, Lies and Work podcast, because it really is brilliant at bringing those insights in an accessible way. So yeah, totally, total big fan. And I think there's a big thing, isn't there, in our profession? I think a lot of people, I think we're almost trained to wrap things up into flowery words. You know, we're kind of encouraged, aren't we, to make things to feel official by having fancy words on it. So I always love it when I come across a practitioner who's really pushing the boundaries on that and challenging people. I will not tell people about our late night conversations about the DOPA. That's nobody's business. What we talk about in private is our business, eh? That's not our moment today.
Paul, I'm not going to lie.
The revolution is afoot. So yeah, part of it. So talk to me today then. I'd love to hear what moment you want to bring into our conversation today. What's getting you?
My FFS moment is twofold. Fold one is Myers Briggs, Disc, anything else that you can put into that category of nonsense that is used in organizations for training, development, or God forbid, recruitment. I strongly believe every time an organization uses Myers Briggs, the psychologist loses their wings. I'm for all the psychologists to keep us going. I think what we all know, there's no science behind it. We all know Disc was a dude that wrote the Wonder Woman comments. We all know that there aren't 16 personality types. Researchers found no evidence of that. And yet businesses continue to use it. And I understand why, because it's simple, it makes sense, it feels intuitive. And it just makes sense. I understand why, but it's a hard no from me, which brings me to fold two of my FFS, which is when my beautiful psychology colleagues, and I understand where they're coming from, will say, as long as you don't use it in the wrong way, if it gives you a shared vocabulary, that's great to use Myers-Briggs. As long as you don't use it in development and recruitment, it's fine. And I've met enough business owners to go, I've stopped listening after I can use it.
Yeah.
That nuance isn't there. So that's my FFS moments.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm in for you, and we're getting quite a few comments that absolutely agree with you on this. So we've had a big, capital yes, Leanne, on that. And I think there's a really interesting thing, isn't there, about this bit about face validity. So just because it makes sense to me, makes me think that it might be robust. And I think the suppliers on those sorts of things are very good at that. I don't know about you, but, you know, similar to you, I grew up in psychometrics and selection. You know, that was the early stage of my career, and I was a massive snob about it, and then didn't do it for quite a while. And whenever a client asked me to use Disc, they were saying, oh, they've got loads of stuff about predictive validity and things now. And I think there's a chunk of pseudoscience around those tools now, where they've taken other tools and cherry picked some of the stats that they think, well, they make these really long. I tried to read the report and I couldn't understand it, and I've been trained in the stats on that stuff. But it's Danny's just saying that's a very Sagittarius-y thing to say. He's starting to echo us in terms of different models of these things. Caught my attention. Thank you, Danny. But I think there is something, isn't there, about they're trying to create this veneer of robustness, and I think what we don't do a very good job of, I think, as the people trained in these tools and to design these tools is educating broader business and HR buyers in what is truth and useful and what is not. So I think, there's a challenge here, isn't there, by should those providers be allowed to sell the snake oil that they are? Probably not. But is there a role for people like us in demystifying some of that stuff so that we're not just shouting from the sides? I don't know what your thoughts is. Well, I know what your thoughts are because I know what your day job is, and you're doing that, aren't you, in spades?
I mean, I'm the same. Like I'm coming from a snobby perspective. I did my level A and B, and I was Hogan and SHL and that type of kind of tools that can be brilliant in the right scenario. And I think that's the problem, right? I understand as psychologists, our default is it depends, because it really does. But a business owner who is busy and needs an answer and needs a solution to get moving doesn't have the time for the nuance. So I think it's our job as psychologists to kind of go, it depends, but there's some clear rules here. And if it includes a colour or a combination of letters, it's a no. And beyond that, let's talk about actually what you want to achieve. Because there's a lot of clients that I'll speak to who will be like, oh, we're thinking about using Clifford Strengths. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Oh, because our team are suffering with imposter syndrome. Okay. So how are we going to first understand the problem before we pick the solution? I think that's the real value that psychologists bring. We are trained. We are obsessed with defining the problem and then finding the right solution. So to any HR leader out there who is wanting to work with psychometrics, who's wanting to engage a provider, my kind of litmus test for how good that consultant is or that provider is how much time are they spending with you to define your problem. And if they're not spending any time at all, they should be spending 80% of the time defining that problem. And if they're not, use something else. I mean, you joke about horoscope. I was horrified by Myers Briggs. I can't get off my mind. Horoscopes and all the little quizzes. Use them if you want to have a vocabulary about how people react, behave within team environments. If it's just for a team building type activity, and if it feels silly, it is. But so is Myers Briggs, so is DISC. So
yeah, and I think there's an interesting piece, isn't there about how do we make sure that that we are getting underneath the symptoms on that. So exactly the point that you make there. A big question that I use when I'm doing any sort of selection work is I always talk about having the nature of the beast conversation. So it's not enough to get the job description. And I think if somebody is coming to support you with selection, with psychometrics or the like, and they just say, give me the job description or I'll do you my standard leadership report, run, I would say, run as fast as you can. If they're not asking you awkward questions about what the role is, what success looks like in that role in the first while, but on from that, but also what are the challenges that somebody needs to face in order to hit that success, then they're not going to host a conversation or be able to select a tool that allows them to gather insights that are truly relevant. So I think it's a bit about the tool, but also just you being mindful of the sort of person, how curious is that person and how willing are they to dig in? Because I think we are as psychologists trained to be curious, but I don't know that everybody stays curious. I think people get a model and a tool and they end up in the house of OPQ or Hogan's, and that's what they always do. And I think we need to really stay connected with that. What's the right problem for this solution, which I'm not sure everybody always does.
Absolutely. We need that toolkit, don't we? And that toolkit needs to include lots of different things, psychometrics and other types of tools we can use as well. But yeah, I think there's a big thing. You touched on something there, which is my other, it's my favorite thing in the world, job analysis. Oh, man, more organizations did job analysis. Recruitment would just be the most beautiful thing. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I've been brought in retrospectively halfway through a recruitment process that's already halfway through and asked to use some type of psychometric assessment and had to do this kind of very quick job analysis going, right, well, exactly what you said there. How does this role function within the business? What does success look like? What does it need to achieve? And really dig in to understand the kind of traits and characteristics that will be beneficial, behaviors that are going to be beneficial. And I must admit, I'm at the point in my career now where I'm still obsessed with personality assessments. I think they're really interesting. But I'm at the point of my career where I find behavior-based assessments much more much more useful, particularly if we're talking about leadership.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. And I think there's a piece in there about that kind of contextual need and priority. And I suppose the one fact that sticks in my head from a research paper that wasn't about 97 because it was attached to my master's, but there was this seminal paper that was done that I'm obsessed with that looked at kind of the predictive validity of different tools, and even the most robust selection measure always sticks in my head with something like it only measures 42% of workplace behavior, because a lot of our workplace behavior is adaptive and influenced by the nudges within the environment. So if you want to really be able to understand somebody, you've got to kind of simulate those nudges in environment, don't you, and see what type of behavior they demonstrate. So I totally agree with you. I think we've got to be careful about knowing that we're never going to get a perfect representation of a person. All we can really understand is, well, some of it's only like 12% of workplace behaviour, isn't it? I'm pretty sure unstructured interview was something like predictive of 12% of behaviour, which is just not
about 10%, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even if we get a really good, robust tool, it's still not hugely predictive of future job performance, which is what we should always be thinking about in this kind of hiring a selection assessment process, which I don't think many business owners really kind of connect with. And I think psychologists need to work harder to help them connect it. It's no coincidence that we have interviews as a very popular method of selection assessment. It's no coincidence that we do work sample tests, because is it over 100 years of research now that has shown the predictive validity of these tools. So I think it's a massive education point. And with that, I think psychologists in this day and age, where there is so much noise, so much opinion from various business influencers, let's say B2B influencers, we need to have more of a voice and feel more confident to go, no. In this situation, certain situations, it doesn't depend. It's a hard no. Because the scope creep, the risk of the scope creep that comes from that. Oh, we'll just use it for team development, but then actually we really connected with that. We haven't got any blues. Let's use it to recruit some blues in. That'll even out the team. And that scope creep that is dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose the other piece as well is then where you apply your effort. So if you're so focused on trying to create this cookie cutter or select this cookie cutter person without recognizing that environment, once they're landed, is probably going to be far more powerful in terms of how they behave compared to kind of who they are as an individual, really. You know, of course it's important, but like, I think we do so much work on getting the perfect person, and then we drop them into this scenario that we probably never told them about, or they never understood, and we're not supporting them anyway. There's this whole picture, isn't there? Where do we apply our effort, and how do we think about performance as something that flows through recruitment, selection, but then also into that induction piece and the type of environment that we create for people? I think we just got to be careful of those, well, the snake oil salesmen who are trying to give us this quick win that's going to help us pick this perfect gingerbread person shape that may not be what we ever needed in the first place, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. There is no silver bullet, is there? And your business owners want that quicker fix, but there's things that we can do that will make it feel quicker. And it's stuff that I don't see people talking about. I don't see psychologists on LinkedIn talking about job analysis. I don't see like courses on how to run a job analysis. And it's so important to define the role that you need, particularly for small businesses, particularly if they're hiring a senior position. That's a significant investment, you know, in terms of the money that they have. So why would you not want to take that time to collect the data to understand exactly what is going to serve the needs of the business now and where you want to take it? And I would love to see more psychologists talk about that stuff.
So if we're talking to a business owner today, what's the couple of things that you would encourage them to take away from the conversation to really kind of make a difference on this and not get caught on a big bill of MBTI that hasn't really told them anything, or has got everybody talking about how they're a red, so it's absolutely fine that they lose their temper today? Well, no, MBTI doesn't do that, but you know what I mean.
I think the first thing is to understand Myers Briggs Disc will not serve you in the way you want it to in your business, in terms of people development, in terms of selection. It just won't serve your business. So don't be fooled. Don't buy into the hype. Run away. If you're already using it, don't panic. It's fine. But look at how we can transition away from that. The second thing is I would encourage you to think about behavior as opposed to personality, particularly if we're looking at team development, if we're looking at senior leadership positions, culture. You know, my favorite definition of culture is John Amici. Culture is defined by the worst behaviors tolerated. It's behavior that we need to really kind of focus in on. And I think finally it would be to remember that if anything has psych in it, psychometrics, psychological assessment at work, it's a really good idea to engage a psychologist, because we are, and again for small business owners, we are ethically bound to make sure we are selling you the right solution, to define the problem and then sell you the right solution, and build in some kind of evaluation. So we'll end up proving to you how good we were in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, once that intervention has been done. Yeah, engage a psychologist, talk to a psychologist, and just get that expert view of what this tool actually does and whether it can solve the problem that you've identified. So run away from Myers Briggs and other type-based assessments, focus on behavior, and engage a psychologist.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, there's a bit is now about just trusting yourself. I think sometimes we think that a fancy report will do something for us that we can't do ourselves. And, we know from the research that actually a really good quality structured interview that's behaviorally anchored and focused on the demands of the role is much more powerful than any of the stats that DISC or the like can throw at you. So Danny says face validity is the sexiest of all the validity. So if it feels good, if it looks right, then, it feels good. We kind of validate it for ourselves. But it's okay. Trust yourself. Build a structured interview that is focused on the needs of your business and your context, and you'll probably do a better job than trying to figure out what colour you want to work with, won't you?
That's based on that job analysis. Honestly, I'm campaigning for job analysis. I might this make a mission for 2026.
Make job analysis sexy again. Sounds amazing. Sounds really good. Cool. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, Leanne. It's been absolute joy to have you on. I love a little bit of a rant about these things, but I think you're right. The more that we can increase visibility on this stuff, the better. So yeah, if you want a job analysis, you know the lady to talk to. She's an expert in them. Thank you.
Thank you.